First we will understand how the diamond problem is created in multiple inheritance. And obviously we will be learning it through the code, but we will be understanding through the diagram how the diamond problem occurs and how this MRO, that is method resolution order, is used to resolve this problem. And also we will understand the role of method overriding in creating this diamond problem. We will be understanding everything in detail through running code and using the step-by-step approach. So in this lecture we will discuss about the diamond problem. The diamond problem occurs in multiple inheritance only, and this problem is also known as diamond problem in multiple inheritance, diamond inheritance, and deadly diamond of death. Now before understanding its code, let us understand what the problem is. See, this is lecture 21. In the lecture 19th we discussed about multiple inheritance. It was something like this. There is one class A, there is another class B. There is no relation between these two classes A and B. This class C inherits the class A as well as class B. So what will happen? The object of this class C can use the functions and attributes of class A as well as the functions and attributes of class B, right? So what's the problem in that? Problem occurs when this situation occurs. That is, there is a class A, the B class inherits A, and it overrides a function of class A. Now recall, in lecture 19 we discussed about multiple inheritance. In lecture 20, that is in the previous lecture, we discussed about method overriding, and that is related to this diamond problem. How? I'll tell you. I assume that you've seen my previous lecture of method overriding. If you haven't seen that, in the description box I am providing you the link of the entire playlist. Watch that video. It will become very easy for you to understand this lecture. So class B inherits the class A, and the class B defines a function in itself. That is, it overrides a function of class A. This class C also inherits the class A, and this class also overrides a function of class A. Now this class D does multiple inheritance. This class D inherits class B as well as class C. Now this D class has two copies of the function which these classes are overriding. When the object of D class will invoke that function, which of the overridden function will be invoked? Whether that of class B or whether that of class C. Let us understand it more precisely. Let us assume that there is a class executor. It asks the user to enter code name and salary, and it computes the allowances. There is a function cal allowances in the executive class which calculates three things. One is CCA, city compensation allowance, and it is assumed to be 20% of the basic salary. It is a rough figure, right? HRA, house rent allowance. It is assumed to be of 10% of the basic salary for executive class, class A, right? And there is a gross salary which is the sum of basic salary, CCA and HRA. Now, this officer class, that is B class, is inheriting the executive class. It has no problem with any of the functions of class A, that is executive class, but these allowances are different. That is, the allowances that the officer gets is different from the executive class. The percentage of the allowance is different. Like CCA is 25%, HRA is 15% of the basic salary. Similarly, the manager class also inherits the executive class. It also overrides this cal allowances function because the percentage of CCA and HRA for manager are different than the executive class. Now, this is a director class. If in the director class you define one cal allowance function, and in this cal allowance function you calculate CCA and HRA as per the norms of the director, right? Then there will never be a diamond problem, because when the object of the director class will invoke the cal allowance function, it will execute the function which is defined in its own body, that is in the director class. It will never search for the cal allowance function in officer or manager or any other class, because it is already there. The diamond problem will occur when this cal allowance function is not defined in director class, and the director class is doing multiple inheritance by inheriting the officer class as well as the manager class. Now when the cal allowance function will be invoked through the object of the director class, how the Python will resolve whether the cal allowance function of officer class has to be invoked or the cal allowance function of the manager class has to be invoked, because the object of director class has two copies of cal allowance function, one through the officer class and another through manager class. The solution is MRO, that is method resolution order. What does it do? It makes use of DLR sequence, that is depth, then left and right. That means it will search for the desired function in its own body. If that function is not found, it will search for the left function which has been inherited. It will search for the desired function in the first class which has been inherited. That is, it will search for the cal allowance function in the officer class. If it is not found in officer class, it will search for the function in the next class which has been inherited. But if that function is found in the officer class, it will execute it without any conflict. That is, in MRO, method resolution order, if this is class A, officer class is considered as B, manager class is considered as C, and director class is D, in that case, DLR sequence will be followed. That is, D class will be searched for the desired function. If that function is not found, then class B is searched, and if it is not found, then class C is searched, and finally the class A is searched. But it also means that if you reverse it, that is, if the class director inherits manager class followed by officer class, the sequence will be somewhat like this. Class D will be searched, then class C, that is manager class, will be searched for the desired function. If not found, then class B, and finally the class A. I must tell you that the base class in the Python is the object class. That means whenever you define a class, whether it inherits any class or not, every class by default inherits the object class, which is a built-in base class. Now let's finalize with the words of MRO, method resolution order. It defines the order in which the base classes are to be searched for the desired method. In case of multiple inheritance, the attribute, the desired function, is first searched in the current class. If it is not found, then the parent class is searched, and the order for searching the parent class is DLR, depth and then left to right in the class itself, then the class which are inherited starting from the left to right. Now let us understand the program. I must tell you that in order to know the MRO of a class, that is the order that it follows while searching for a method, there are two things. One is your MRO method. If you invoke a MRO method on an object, it will show the sequence of searching the classes for any desired method or attribute. And secondly is to display the MRO attribute. There are two underscores on the left and right of this attribute. Okay. Now let us come to the program. This is the executive class. It has a default constructor asking the user to enter code name and salary. This is a cal allowance function with certain formulas. This EMP info function is only one in the entire program, and it does what? It displays code name and salary which are entered by the user, and it displays the three things CCA, HRA and grocery which are computed in the cal allowance function. Now this is the officer class which is inheriting the executive class. It is overriding the cal allowance function. This is a manager class which is inheriting the executive class. It is overriding the cal allowance function. This is a director class. It has no function inside it. Now to understand the logic, we'll start from the main function. On the screen you get a message, enter details of the executive. You are making an object exec obj of executive class. How many arguments are there while defining an object? None. So the compiler will look for a default constructor, and if it is found, it will execute it. So the control will come into the executive class. This is the default constructor. It will ask the user to enter code name and salary, and the code name and salary entered by the user will be assigned to code name and salary attributes. These code name and salary are the attributes of exec obj object. Then this cal allowances function is invoked through the exec obj. So obviously the cal allowance function of the executive class will be executed. It will calculate the CCA, which is 20% of basic salary, HRA is 10% of basic salary. These are rough figures. Just for calculation purposes, we have entered any formula, okay? And it is calculating the gross salary as the sum of basic salary, CCA and HRA. After that, control will come over here. It will display a message that please enter the details of the officer. You are making an object officer obj of officer class. Obviously the compiler will look for a default constructor in the officer class. Here is the default constructor. Here you are invoking the default constructor of the super class, that is the executive class. Cursor will come over here and it will ask the user to enter code name and salary, which will be assigned to the code name and salary attributes of the officer obj object. You are invoking the cal allowance function through officer object. So the cal allowance function, which is defined in the officer class, that is which is overriding the base class method, this cal allowance function is being overridden by this method. So it will be executed and it will calculate the CCA as 25% of basic salary, HRA as 15% of basic salary. These values are different from the allowances of the executive class. After that, the control will come over here. You get a message that please enter the details of the manager. You are making the manager obj object of manager class. No arguments are here. So default constructor of the manager class will be executed. Control will come over here. Here again, you are invoking the default constructor of the superclass. And what is the superclass? Executive class. So control will come over here. Again, it will ask the user to enter code name and salary. Those code name and salary will be assigned to code name and salary attributes of the manager obj object. Then you are invoking the cal allowances function through the manager obj. Cursor will come to the manager class. This function is again overriding the cal allowances function of the base class. So it will calculate the CCA and HRA. CCA is assumed to be 30% of the basic salary. HRA is assumed to be 20% of the basic salary. Again, these are random figures, right? And these values are different from the executive and officer class, okay? After that, the control will come over here. It will ask the user to enter the details of the director. An object, director obj is being created of the director class. No arguments are here. So default constructor of the director class will be executed. Here you are invoking the default constructor of the superclass. Officer is the superclass for the director. So control will come to the default constructor of the officer class. Here you are invoking the default constructor of the superclass of the officer. And executive is the class which is the superclass of the officer class. So control will come here and it will execute this default constructor of the executive class. It will ask the user to enter code name and salary. And this time the code name and salary will be assigned to the code name and salary attributes of the director obj. Now here this is the main soul of the program. You are invoking the cal allowances function of the director object. So control will come to director class. There is no cal allowance function in the director class. Now the compiler should get confused because it has two copies of cal allowance function. One is through officer and another is through manager. But no, it will use the MRO, method resolution order, through which it will search the officer class first for the cal allowance function, and here it will find the cal allowance function and it will invoke it. It also means that the allowances of the officer and director will be same, right? So control will come over here. On the screen you get a message, salary information of the executive is, you are invoking the enp info function of the exec obj, that is executive class. enp info is the only method in the entire program. It will display the code name and salary, that is the attribute of the executive class, and CCA, HR and gross salary of the executive class itself only, okay? After that, it is invoking the enp info through the officer obj. So the control will come here. It will display the code name and salary which were entered for the officer object, and this CC and HRA and gross salary which were computed through the cal allowances of the officer object. Then the control will come over here. You are invoking the enp info function through the manager object. So it will display the code name and salary and HRA, CC and the gross salary which were computed through the manager object, that is manager obj. And here you are invoking the enp info to display the code name, salary and the other details of the director object, and this will display the MRO sequence, that is the sequence which has been followed by the class for searching a attribute or a function. So let us copy this program, paste it. I am running it. It is asking me to enter the details of the executive. I am entering the employee code as 101, employee name as Bintu, salary, and to make it easy I'll enter 1000. For the officer I'll enter the employee code as 102, the name of the employee is Chirag. Salary I'm entering deliberately as 1000 so that we can compare the calculations. Employee code is 103. This is for the manager, right? This is the name of the manager. Salary is again 1000 bucks, and this is the fourth director. Name of the director is Annu, and the salary is assumed to be 1000. Now see, this is output. This is your executive class. So you get the 20% as the CCA 200, right? 10% as HRA, that is 100. Total is 1300, right? This is your officer class. Computing as CCA is 25%, so it will come out to be 250 rupees. 15% as the HRA, that is 150 rupees, and the total 1400. This is your manager. 30% as CCA, that is 300 rupees. HR is 20%, that is 200, and the total is 1500, right? Because the director class is inheriting the officer class first, so it will invoke the cal allowances of the officer class. See, look at the director. You got the CC of the director as 250 rupees. Why? Because 25% of basic salary is computed, right? HR is 15%, that is why 150 rupees. This is the gross salary of the director. So it confirms that MRO has been used And after searching for the char allowances function in the director class, Python searched for the first class which is being inherited, right? So it invoked the char allowances function of the officer class because that is the class which is being inherited first, right? And this is the MRO which is being displayed. This is through the MRO attribute and this is through MRO function. You can see that first the director class is invoked, thereafter followed by officer class, then manager class, then executive class, and finally the object class. Let me tell you, the object class is a built-in class, and whenever we make any class, our class always inherits the object class. Output of the both MRO attribute and MRO method will be same. Now if I change the sequence of inheritance, now see, I am making the director class to inherit first the manager class, then officer class. What will happen? Can you guess it? Yes. The char allowances of the manager class will be considered first. Let's run it and confirm it. I am entering the same data. See, look at the director, Anu. It has got 300 as the CCA because 30% is computed as the CCA. See, HRA is considered 20%. That is 200 rupees and this is the total. If you followed this lecture, please subscribe to my channel, share the video with your friends and do write your comments. Thanks for watching the video. Have a nice day.